Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by 4for4 Bets. I'm Ryan Noonan. 9 days out from the NFL draft, I am joined here today by my three very smart friends to talk all things draft betting for you. Ramping up here as we get closer. We'll do a couple shows this week, probably do at least 2, maybe 3 next week as we approach next Thursday, draft day. Lots of stuff continuing to come out, new markets. Circa got involved here this week with some over-unders, which we've been thirsting for. We want some more widely available things in the domestics, but we'll get into some of that today. Joining me here, as always, Connor Allen. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, not much. I was telling you off air, but I popped my shoulder out playing some rec basketball last night, so I'm like a half cripple right now. But it's still not impacting my ability to pound some circle lines to make some money. It was a great day yesterday. I have never seen markets move faster because they manually adjust everything. So they don't have like an algorithm that like moves the juice 10 cents, 25 cents, like based on bets. Like they legitimately hand adjust everything. And we were seeing lines move like 3 to 4 spots every time someone would max bet something. So pretty wild day, but some exciting times, tons of new props up.
Yeah, good time to be here. Scott Smith, as always, doing his homework, putting out mock drafts, grinding, ear to the all the news going on. Scott, what's going on, bud?
Nothing much. Just finished up cross-referencing all the top 30 visits. Look, I know a lot of people go to a specific website out there, but there's multiple places you have to kind of cross-reference this stuff to go ahead and find your info. So if you go to one specific website that's pretty popular with the top 30 visits, they're still missing a bunch. So I've got all of them and ready to go.
Walter.
Love it. Also, last man here is, again, excited to have VR as a part of our draft coverage this year. Again, he is releasing all of his NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL draft plays in our 4for4 Discord this season. He is printed in the draft streets in the last 2 years alone. His specific channel that you can get access to, you want to get in there. You need the betting subscription of 4for4. Use our promo code VR to get you a discount. Is the man himself, Vegas Refund. What's going on, bud?
What's going on? I was just going through all the on Fanatics. I was typing in all the consensus names and the custom jerseys. Like, why not? And it didn't work. But like I was typing like Bowers into the Jets, went through. I typed in Odunze, went through. Typed in Fatano, went through.
All right. Well, this is new. I like this. This is uncovered corner in the streets. So we can hopefully, this is what we're talking about, like 30 visits that aren't actually being covered, customized jersey randomizer to see who's not populating. Like this is the stuff you're not going to find anywhere else except here on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel. So if you're hanging out with us, subscribe, thumbs up, all those things will help you make sure you get notifications for the rest of the shows as we approach draft season. Again, take advantage of that deal. Promo code VR, betting subscription at 4for4 gets you access to the entirety of the season. So you're going to capture all that we do on 4for4 for next NFL season, but it's also going to get you a specific deal if you use promo code VR to get all those draft bets and get you in the Discord. So
I think Jeremiah might be a sub because that tweet he just put out, I mean, maybe he tailed those. Maybe he tailed those two, but
yeah, that was pretty hilarious.
I love that tweet.
2 of your exact bets earlier. He was tweeting out, so it was perfect.
We do have sleepers in there in season 2, which were we know you're in there, but it happens. It's a good place to be. Good like-minded community. Smart folks talking betting, talking NFL all the time. So check that out. Use promo code VR, scoop up that betting sub, and buy his sheets. Go to VR's at Vegas Refund on Twitter. The draft betting sheet that he puts together is just there's no peer in the space with what that is information wise and super helpful. So go to Vegas Refund on Twitter, find the sheet. You'll be able to find it pretty easy. Scoop that up. Circa. Connor, they popped a pretty sizable market of over-unders. As you mentioned, they moved drastically, and we're hoping that maybe the domestics take a lead here from them. Well, they took the lead. Hopefully they jump in and continue to put out a pretty healthy market. But some key takeaways. Connor, I'll let you get started with what's going down over at Circa.
Yeah, first off, Timothy Chalamet calling me out here. So need Connor to comment on his misbet of risking 500 versus to win 500 on Newton. So if you guys were betting that prop, it opened at 18.5 minus 115. And I was basically just trying to bet like whatever I could. So I got really nervous and literally just put 500 instead of to win 500. So that was just like a straight up mistake. Like there was no doubt about it. But then it moved to it denied me, moved, denied me again, moved to minus 150. So I was just like literally just hammering it just to try and get it down. And then by the time I was able to try and get more down, it was like 23.5. So I was like, all right, I'm going to. So straight up mistake. The Chalamet calling me out. I know that there were some members of some communities that were trying to, be a little arrogant and, call me out again for it, but whatever, they can go pound sand. It's fine. We got 500 down.
I mean, that line reminds me of Devontae Wyatt opening at like 14.5. I mean, and it just kept going up and kept going up. I mean, which Newton, I mean, it was set at what, 17.5?
18,
right?
I think it was 18.5. I don't know. I mean, I was scrolling through the whole thing, like going through, like marking down the ones that I liked, and then I saw that and just like lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, This is the craziest shit I've seen in a long time.
And that Bengals guy on Twitter, what's his name? Goodberry?
Yeah,
he tweeted out like the over-unders, and I was looking at the comments, and all these like Bengals fans were like Newton ! Under. I was like, what? Which, I guess it was like set for the Bengals apparently, but yeah, I mean, which the Devontae Wyatt line at 14.5 was set for the Texans at that time and was way wrong. So
yeah, I mean, I think that some of the later round guys too were pretty interesting. I played Peyton Wilson over at 41.5. I didn't even really know much about Peyton Wilson, but thankfully knew some draft grinders were like, hey, he's 4 season-ending injuries and is old and is a tweener linebacker. Like, he's not going to go in the first 12 picks of the second round. And he's not in a single first-round mock draft either. So that was, I think, a pretty good look there. 63.5, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if he's a second-round pick either with the injury history and everything. So that was another notable one. Tyler Nubin opened to 32.5. Again, couldn't get there fast enough. That's another one that I don't, VR can correct me, but I think he's maybe 1 or 2 mock drafts in the last 2 months in the first round. So yeah, I think there's shout out to Circa first off. That's why I'm wearing the hat today, for actually posting all these and definitely taking some lumps here. Because DraftKings opened way more now. Caesars already had a bunch, but I think they're going to keep opening more too. So overall, pretty solid outing.
Yeah, typically you'll see, people inch in, especially like round 1 markets, basically, right? Where we have a little bit more info, but for them to come out pretty strong with some, maybe even borderline day 3 guys is fun to see. Which is good for them. Any takeaways here, VR? I know obviously you attacked this aggressively too. Any thoughts on what you like, what you moved, or anything that's bettable now?
Oh, I'm in serious FOMO the last day being in New Jersey, which it's the one thing New Jersey doesn't have in terms of betting options is Circa. And yeah, I was on the sidelines for these, and these big movers. I mean, the higher the number, like basically if anyone has an over-under set outside of the first round, it's going to move a lot more off of any individual bet, where if it's like in the hundreds, like one bet could send it 20 spots. Where like I think that a lot of these where the current prices are, like Xavier Leggett was one I found very interesting, where it was like open 44. And then last night it got all the way down to, I want to say 34.5. And then it came back up a little bit more, where like a lot of these current prices actually aren't what like the initial moves were, where they almost came down or went up way too far and then someone else came back on it. But Leggett was very interesting. He's someone like McShay's been pumping. But if you look at guys like Brugler, like Jeremiah's big boards, like he is way down in the 80s, which is a very interesting aspect to it. And there were a couple like Fatano, they opened at 16.5, which, I mean, like that, I don't see him getting past 6. I mean, he's a consensus to the Seahawks, and I agree with that. Then it came down to 14.5, which would assume be an over only. But yeah, I definitely was really FOMO yesterday over these. But like Trice, I mean, Trice is one guy that you saw mocked in the first round back in January, February. And I think the initial move was to the 70s, then moved even more in the 80s, where he's another guy. And I was listening to the Standig pod yesterday with Brugler, and he was basically like mentioning, like, would you rather have Braylon Trice in the 3rd or 4th round or Nealon in the 1st or 2nd? And Brugler's like been pumping Nealon for the last week, and it's like, no question, Nealon. I don't even know if I would take Trice in the 3rd round by itself. So
That's all it takes.
it brings you. I mean, this is like 2 years ago when they opened with like 100 over unders, and it was the best. And I will take this every year, and it definitely pushed all the other books to put out the rest of their menu. I don't think. Maybe Caesars. If we get any more, I will be happily surprised. I'm hoping we do, but kind of feels like, I think we're already at way more than we had last year. So I'm okay with it.
Scott, were you at any takeaways from this list or anything? You know, some guys we've talked about quite often here on the show. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm in Louisiana and I have to miss out on all the Circa action as well. So I didn't get to play a lot of these lines and stuff. But look, when I start looking at some of these lines, a couple of them that I really like that stand out to me, I think Ennis Rakeshaw is a guy that you've seen in a handful of mocks getting some love there to possibly go in the 1st round. I think if he doesn't go in the 1st round, I think he's got a solid chance to go within that first 12 to 15 picks of the 2nd round. So that's one of the ones that I really like. And then, you know, just hitting on some of these other guys, I think there is a lot of Newton going in the 1st round. Talk, you know, I think he's kind of slipped out, but the more and more you kind of dig into scouts, you find out that like a lot of the scouts really tend to like Jerzon Newton and some of the fits that he has. So it may not just be Byron Murphy as the only defensive tackle to go there in the 1st round. I think Newton's going to probably end up sliding in. I could see him fitting in with San Francisco there at 31, worst case scenario. So I think there's a lot of action still and some things that left to be figured out. But, you know, some of these lines still have some value in my opinion.
Yeah, and the one thing I do want to say, if you're like looking at these and you can bet these for props that are outside the 1st round, I would not recommend pulling up mock drafts and seeing where they're mocking these guys in the 2nd and 3rd round. I would 100% default to big boards with these guys, whether it's Jeremiah, Brugler, like whoever it is, a consensus big board. That is definitely going to be your best reference for betting these over-unders in the like 33 or greater range. Because these mock drafts in the 2nd or 3rd that are putting out like full 7-round mock drafts, or Walter always has like 3 rounds every week in Charlie, where you're really throwing darts at that point. And to me, it kind of feels like you're going to maneuver the 2nd and 3rd round in your mock to make it fall how you want, compared to like a big board is just, there's no real opinion on it. There's no fits. It's just, this is where the guy's ranked. And that's what happens with a lot of these teams, even though they're probably going to draft for need more after the 1st round. They might just do best available. And if Luke McCaffrey's on the big board is ranked 100 on Brugler's like top 100, I don't know if he is. I'm just using a random example. Like that would have value on the 131 to me, which would be an under, which the one guy I got killed on when Circa did was, God, I'm drawing a blank. What's the Lions wide receiver that's fantastic?
Amon-Ra.
Amon-Ra. Took Amon-Ra like under 99.5. And he went like 110. And he was just like ranked way far ahead on all the big boards, and which clearly worked out and was correct. But that's the one I ate shit on.
They should hire you, man. I feel like that's, you know, you knew about Amon-Ra before that.
I mean, they should hire the guys that I used to reference that, which me.
Yeah, one other one that I thought was interesting that's not on the sheet because he didn't technically move numbers was Malik Nabers opened at 5.5 at plus money on the over. And I think that was derived from the pricing right now in the market, which is like 5th, he's favored to go 5th and 6th overall. But if you go through the scenarios, like I just don't really see a way that he's going 5th overall unless it goes 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison 4, and the Chargers stay and pick a wide receiver in Malik Nabers. Like if JJ McCarthy goes top 5, it's very unlikely Malik Nabers goes top 5. If the Chargers trade out, it's unlikely the team's trading up from Malik Nabers. If the Chargers, could also prefer an offensive lineman or a defensive player at 5 instead. There's so many different outs there. So I think that's minus 200 now on Fanatics, around minus 200 on Circa too. I don't know. I'm getting pretty close to be able to lay that as well, even more, because it's just like a really, really thin, narrow path to him even going the top 5.
Yeah, you're better off just playing like exact team on Neighbors, like to go to the Chargers or whatever. If you want to.
Edgerrin Cooper one is interesting to me, Scott. We've talked about some. I'd say Cooper. That's not Cooper's team in first round, but it's maybe Cooper's team specifically to Dallas, which I think is interesting. Connor has that in his latest mock draft as well. That one I thought was curious. The other one that's tougher to pinpoint, and I think VR makes a great point because it becomes more of a big board conversation versus anything else. Blake Corum going from 80.5 to 90.5. Again, this could be a bet or two. A single bet of size can make a move like that. Interesting to note, the Chargers desperately in need of a running back, kind of in the middle there. Like they have pick 69 in the 3rd round, and then they're down at pick 105. So there's a little bit of buffer there, but.
And Albert Breer yesterday in his daily mailbag, at the very bottom is last comment, which was actually buried under an ad. I forget what the exact words. He was like, if there's a way to bet on the Chargers taking Blake Corum, tell me. Or I forget the exact wording, but basically he was saying Corum to the Chargers. I don't think he knows you can actually bet that, but he was like, if there was a way, I would. Which was notable, and I bet that right after, and I probably missed out on odds I could have had. It was 340 at FanDuel. But the other two guys I just want to bring up, Xavier Worthy, way lower than I expected. And then they opened, what's the other guy's name? Odunze Mitchell. He opened at 17.5 too, which immediately got bet up to 32. And then I think he came down to I think he's 27 now. And it actually got down to 24.5 last night, which at 24.5 would be the trade up range, you would assume. Then you have Schefter saying he's going to go a lot earlier than you expect, but every single mock has him at 28 to the Bills, which we kind of assume is the mock draft rating scheme, I guess. But at the same time, I think we assume that he's going to go earlier than 28, but it's just so hard to bet on trades, I guess, because it's hard to slot him into any other team than the Bills in the 20s.
Yeah, that's the thing. He probably does get pushed up if Brian Thomas goes earlier. Someone trades up for Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas goes to the Colts, some of those options that we've talked about there. So I think those are, kind of the pieces that have the trickle down effect of how this whole mock draft and draft season kind of plays itself out. All right, Connor, do you want to bring up your mock? We could talk through that, or any other stuff you guys want to do.
Was that the Breer quote that you just pulled up?
Yeah,
Connor?
looks like it.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
let's pop that up again. So if there's a way to bet a team drafting a player, Blake Corum, on day 2, let me know, which is first off hilarious that half these guys just have never bet before. And this market's been up for months. I mean, this is actually one of the first markets they posted. But it's always been it's so chalky though. It's plus 300, betting a player to go to a team. I actually have taken some Bengals and Giants ones before free agency, just because I knew that they were going to lose their running back. So I don't know. Let's see here.
I had no plans on betting that until that Breer comment, which it's just you see that, and if you don't, you're gonna be pissed.
He loves Blake Corum. I mean, and I know Harbaugh's not the GM. We don't know how much say he has, but man, he can wax poetic about his Blake Corum time together at Michigan. So would not surprise me at all. All right. Interesting, Connor. Drake May 2, Jayden Daniels 3. Where are we at with this? Anything? Again, this has been posted a couple days. There's been, more steam and more Jayden Daniels stuff to Washington, even since you posted this. Start with the boring 1A block of mock draft discussions here. What are your thoughts on the 2-3?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that Schefter, Breer, Peter Schrager had all of Jayden Daniels at number 2. But I think it's important to note like their wording. So Schefter basically from day one, he went on a world podcast tour last week where he was on like 8 guest spots. I do this for a living, so I listen to every single one of them. And every single one of them, he said basically the same thing of, I'm leaning towards it. And some of the people were like, well, why? Like, what's going on? And every time he's like, well, people that I've talked to think that the Commanders are going to do this. And he explicitly said at one point, like, it's not like I've talked to the Commanders. It's just that this is what people think they're going to do. And so I thought that was noteworthy. Shager's mock today, he said, as of today, I think it's Jayden Daniels. Like, all of these guys are not like, I expect it to be, or I think it's going to be this person. It's like they leave themselves an out with their wording, and maybe it's because they don't want the tip to be picked, or pick to be tipped. I don't think that they want, like, maybe it's that, but it's also just very peculiar language, I think, that, again, leaves them with a little bit of an out there at 2. And so today they had all their guys' visits, like, simultaneously. They have 4 of them. They have Michael Penix in there, JJ McCarthy, Drake May, and Jayden Daniels, all doing meetings today and hanging out with the team together. They really seem to think like it. I don't think it's a done deal. First off, John Kahn tweeted that out today as well. Second off, they are really trying their best to make, put everyone's mind in a pretzel and like not let it out of the bag for basically no reason. I mean, like we know Caleb's won. So for me at this point, like, why would they do that though? Like, why would they do that without knowing? You know what I mean?
The only reason to do that in my eyes is, which I don't buy, is if they're going to be taking someone, that would be like, well, they're not trading out. So like, unless they like are taking offers, there's really no reason. And they want people to think they're going to take a guy that everyone else wants to trade up for more, when realistically, maybe this is like hypothetical. Like JJ McCarthy is a guy that they want. And they don't want people to know that so that they could get more to trade back. But yeah, there's really no reason. It's weird.
Right, exactly. So that leads me to believe that they just like legit haven't made their decision. And so in that case, like, I don't know. I think that the market sentiment right now of Jayden Daniels being minus 300 is not currently reflective of the current odds of like what it should be. So again, like, I think it could be Jayden. I probably should have put Jayden in here, but I wanted to make a stand in terms of like, I think that the market is wrong. So I'm putting Drake May. And I think it's closer to like even with May and Daniels, which again sounds crazy because I'm fighting Adam Schefter, Albert Breer, Peter Schrager, and everyone notable. But I mean, this would not be the first time this happened. It happened with Schefter before. It also happened in the NBA world with Woj. Like, would not be the first time gambling Twitter outscooped, a big insider.
Yep. But for the record, there's no scoop here yet, right? Mm-hmm. So in those examples, we actually had information where we're reading tea leaves. We're still reading tea leaves a little bit, though. I do think there's a little bit of like, I'm the first guy, and this is my first time being in charge for Adam Peters. I'm not a part of an organization. I'm like, I have the big boy seat, and wanting to do things your own way and want to keep things, tight to the vest. People want to know, Scott, are we using our one time? Have we texted? We've talked about that on the show around the connections here at the top. What are your thoughts on the 2-3 turn?
Look, I have a text message out there. I have not fired off my one time, but look, there was some interesting information that came out really this week. If you listen to Ben Standig's podcast from The Athletic, he had Matt Barrows on, who covers the 49ers. And some of the interesting stuff that came out of that podcast was specifically about Adam Peters and how everything went down with basically the Trey Lance, Mac Jones situation and how things were reported there the year that happened. And his information that he basically came out was that Kyle Shanahan was fully on the Mac Jones side. Peter Schefter apparently has a really good relationship with Mike Shanahan, and his information for that pick was coming from Mike Shanahan, basically through Kyle Shanahan, and that it was a combination of, the GM there and Adam Peters making the decision on Trey Lance. And Matt Barrows' inclination as far as trying to choose between Drake May and Jayden Daniels is that specifically when it comes to Adam Peters making this decision, he thinks he's going to lean a little bit more in the favor of Drake May and specifically his long-term ceiling and what it'll be 5 years from now. That was kind of where he went with it and what his inclination is, and basically his conversations and what he's had covering Adam Peters whenever he was with the 49ers. So there's some information there that would lean towards Drake May. The other things that I've kind of heard is that the front office and the scouting and the coaches are all kind of split. I've heard that the coaches tend to lean a little bit more towards Drake May. Towards Jayden Daniels, whereas the front office and some of the scouts are the ones leaning towards Drake May. There's information that before Adam Peters even took this job, when he was still with San Francisco, he was planning on taking a GM job this year, and that he went and visited 3 practices of North Carolina specifically to watch Drake May. So there's smoke on both sides of this there. It's coming in where I'm going to have to go ahead and play that ticket and see what information that I can get. I'm trying to hold out as late as possible. I'll be putting out my mock draft later this week, probably on Thursday, so before our next show. But I think it's important for Washington to get through these next 2 days and get all these guys visited, and then you're going to start hearing a few things trickle out, through certain corners and stuff. So as of right now, my lean is still Drake May over Jayden Daniels, even with all the other guys, the big guys who are much more in tune than I am, saying that it's Jayden Daniels. I have cause and caution with the way they're wording things, and there's always, like Connor said, there's always an out in the way that they word it. So
we are going to either look really smart or really, really dumb here in a week. So I'm looking forward to either way. I mean, again, we're not locking anything in. We haven't released an official play on 2 or 3. I think we're just staying liquid, and that if we get signs that it is Jayden, there's ways to play number 3, and that we can, put money there, and I think have a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, looking at the line movement in the last couple of weeks, we are, with a dip. Obviously, they almost flip flopped, or mostly it wasn't flip flopping. It was basically when we were getting JJ McCarthy to 2 rumors that kind of changed the dynamics of the market a little bit. But right now on DraftKings, you can bet on Drake May plus 215 to be the number 2 pick, whereas Jayden Daniels out to minus 275, minus 250 on FanDuel, who has Drake May at plus 185. So DraftKings best in the market if you're looking to make the Drake May play as of now. So VR, anything to add? Otherwise, you could take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I forget where I saw it, and it's not apples to apples, but like Drake May kind of reminds me of like Stroud last year, where like Stroud was getting shit on for a lot of the process, where, I mean, he was favored to go 1, whether that was, I guess that might be relative to Bryce, but like he was favored to go 1, then I guess he was favored to go 2, and then he was 3, like, and he just kept jumping around, and no one really everyone thought he was going to go a lot later than he actually went. And he ended up just going 2, and it's not apples to apples, but it kind of just reminds you that things can flip on its head in a matter of minutes in these markets.
Yeah, and the trade pieces get pretty interesting too. And there's a lot of good scenarios for trades. Obviously, the big trade that we're all waiting for is the Minnesota trade. Makes sense for that to kind of wait and probably doesn't happen early, which complicates things a little bit because obviously they could trade into 4. Trading into 5 makes a ton of sense. Having other teams try to jump ahead of them to make trades as well makes sense. It gets a little bit easier if that is happening further down the board as well. So, Connor, any of the next handful of picks that you want to talk about? Team landing spots, positional landing spots, I guess anything here in the top 15, 16 or so that you did in the mock draft?
Yeah, we played JJ under 5.5. I still really like that. I mean, I've just kept adding more because I understand that there's been a lot of talk about how, maybe the Vikings won't trade up because they got that first round pick from Houston that approached them about it. Or, maybe JJ McCarthy isn't worth trading up to number 5. The reality is the Giants are very interested in quarterback. They had all of them in for visits. The ownership gave Joe Shane free reign to draft a new quarterback if they want. And then you have the Raiders, you have the Broncos, all wanting a quarterback as well. You have competition for picks. So it's not like Minnesota can just be like, well, I'll wait. They'll play that game. If they play that game, JJ McCarthy's probably just not going to be there. So, I mean, the reality is like one of them has to trade up. We have a very, very, very motivated trade partner in number 5 and potentially a motivated partner in number 4. So I think at number 5 here, we're looking at the Chargers. They, by all accounts, they want to draft an offensive lineman or defensive player. If Marvin Harrison Jr. fell them at 5, I think they'd consider it because there's some good ties there that we've explained on past episodes. But I think that I just, again, like I really struggle to see a way where JJ McCarthy doesn't go in the top 5. And I know some people compare him to Will Levis. I think it's totally different. It started like a month before. There's some smoke for him at 2, 3, and then 4 or 5 to the Vikings. So I think that's still an interesting look there. But, as we go to the back end of the top 10 here, I got a little bit different here with Latu at 8 and Troy Fatanu at 10. And then, Odunze at 9 is pretty chalky. But, there's just some rumblings that the Falcons don't necessarily view the edge class the same way as everyone else. And Latu, there's been more and more steam about him clearing medicals for multiple teams. And if his medicals are clean, he's right up there with Dallas Turner in a lot of ways. And as Noonan, as you would say, he's a dog. So it's he's a very good player. And so it's one of those things where it seems crazy at first, but I don't think that it's that wild. So I know I just spit a lot out at you there, but Noonan, feel free to, add anything on Latu, Fatano, or anyone else.
Well, look, on Latu, you either clear him or you don't. So if you had medical concerns, he goes through the process and you clear him. I know it's not always that clear as day, but like if you have concerns, like it doesn't have to be on everyone's board. But if you watch the tape, he jumps out. We made the connections, obviously, tied to the former defensive coordinator in Washington, where he was when he medically retired before he transferred to UCLA. So there are ties there to the player as well. And I think that those things those dots end up getting connected in a handful of spots. So that makes a lot of sense. We were talking before we went on air, which makes a lot of sense too. Atlanta being in a spot where they could be a nice trade back partner, still be able to land their targeted player, especially if it is Latu, and knowing that, hey, if the Jets want to add one of the receivers, they want to give Rodgers a win now toy, they probably need to get ahead of the Bears, who probably don't let Rome Odunze. I feel pretty good about that. They don't let Rome Odunze pass. So if you want to get one of those players, you're going to need to move ahead of Chicago to make that happen. I don't know that that's the case for Brock Bowers per se, but it definitely is for the receiver group. So I think that could make a ton of sense too. There's just so many viable trade options that actually make sense. And all of a sudden you post a mock and like no one's in their actual spot because you made so many different maneuvering things that actually really logistically make sense. Like you could sell me very much that the Cardinals trade out of 4, but like whoever they traded with from 4 to wherever, doesn't matter. They're going to trade back into a section where they can get either Nabers or Odunze. Like that makes a ton of sense to me. Who's that trading partner? Is that Tennessee? That makes sense too. That could be Atlanta. Like all these scenarios make it pretty liquid, even though we're only 9 days out. Talk to me, Connor, real quick about the Jets just going offensive line. And more so in this instance, you went offensive line over Brock Bowers, who has been more of a growing consensus. And not because we're getting anything there per se, but just because like we just keep hearing, hey, people are too low on Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a special talent. He's got to go somewhere, and the Jets make sense in terms of they're not going to get one of the receivers unless they make a move. Bowers makes sense. What are your thoughts there going offensive line?
Yeah, I really like Brock Bowers personally, but there's just some rumblings behind the scenes that Bowers is not. They're just moving in a different direction potentially, and so heard Fatanu is an interesting selection for them. Now that being said, they could trade up and get a wide receiver. Like there's a lot of like betting on these picks at 8, 9, 10. Like there's a million things that can happen. So if the price isn't right, like it's just not worth betting. That being said, Fatanu is 10 to 1 or something to go 10th overall. If Alt is off the board, I think that it's kind of a free for all for second offensive lineman. So there's a lot of different, I think variables here with 10. Also, this Jets offensive line, they added a bunch of different guys, but none of them were long-term solutions. And Fatanu can kind of play in a bunch of different variety of spots. So he could fill in some gaps immediately and then, switch out to being a tackle eventually in his career. As I think they got, was it Morgan Moses? Maybe it was as well. Some of these guys are just old, they're not really long-term solutions. So it would provide more stability, more depth, for Aaron Rodgers, and protecting Aaron Rodgers is a clear solution for them too. And they got Mike Williams, so it's not like it's just Garrett Wilson again. So I think there's other signs here beyond just Brock Bowers. He did go on a visit. Peter Schrager does know people at the Jets. He tweeted about it. There's that whole kind of hype train. But it looks like I'm going to be fighting Schrager here on a couple of different things, at least for now.
Yeah, Schrager's quote today, VR, this is a special prospect. In fact, I've been told by multiple general managers that I am not high enough on Bowers. So, yeah, that's definitely an interesting one to note. He's been hard this entire process to mock and find a home for. Any thoughts kind of on the section VR where Connor is in terms of like, preteens, you get into that cluster of, Denver, just the quarterback cluster there too, in terms of the next couple of guys. Any thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think like the Falcons, them trading back makes so much sense, where like the Chargers and the Falcons, them trading back, they can basically get the same type of guy in the spot that they would trade back to, that you would assume they would probably take within their original picks. And then, I mean, I think we're going to get into Schrager's mock after this, but it really just comes down to, and like, I think it was like Clev TA made a tweet yesterday. Someone sent it about like the Falcons GM trends of always drafting a guy like 21 or younger. And to me, like, it's a great point for any other team, because the Falcons the last 3 years have drafted Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Drake London, that is like one, you don't see teams 3 years in a row drafting offensive guys like that in the top 10. And they just they're like outlier picks to me, where like if Bijan was older, I think they would still take him. If Drake London was older, I think they would still take him. And same with like Kyle Pitts. So those are like unique draft picks that I don't think really relate, even though I guess Latu and Verse are old. Like they are, I think they're both 23. So I kind of get it, but I don't think it's totally fair. Where really, if like Verse, Latu, and Turner, like kind of the landmines on where they go, where like if Turner doesn't go 8, how far does he fall? Same with Verse, same with Latu. Like, and it does seem like a lot of the opinions that we respect are very high on Latu. Like, just like we saw Schrager putting him 12, and Jeremiah was on a podcast yesterday. It was, I think, the Yahoo podcast, and he went through like his 5 favorite players, and Latu was, I think, the 4th. And it wasn't like his like 4th favorite. Basically, they were just like 4th is because he thinks he's going to go later, where like 1 was Odunze because the order was basically based off where he thinks they're going to be drafted. And Latu was one of them, which is obviously an opinion we respect a lot. But yeah, like those 2 guys are the landmines. And then, I'm not projecting quarterbacks at 12 or 13. So yeah, Connor did a good job of differentiating himself, so that wasn't full chalk. And every mock you see has trades now, and I even put like a note on my sheet with like the percentage to position to team. Like those numbers are somewhat skewed this year because every mock has trades, and it's really, it's tougher. Just not like I base those percentages off of like the pick number, not the team. So
Colin,
I love Rosengarten. Rosengarten to the Niners, like I knew you were going to do that.
Watching too much ESPN.
Whether it's Kuiper or like you just see like they were at the Washington like private workout or whatever it was, like there's a lot of tea leaves projecting Rosengarten to the Niners, and I think his first round odds opened at 16-1. Shout out to Dane. I got on that as well, and they're all the way down, I think, to the 4-1 now. Which is like way too low, but like not real odds, but like, yeah, the 31 Rosengarten, even though Kuiper didn't put him in like the dual mock yesterday, which I'm guessing you probably wasn't happy about.
Yeah. I'm probably going to leave him out, but great zone blocker. His high school coach was Ed McCaffrey, who helped like install the zone blocking system and the Shanahan system. 49ers like stayed after his pro day. John Lynch was talking to him. He's also working out with Joe Staley, former offensive tackle for the 49ers. Like, again, there's a lot of little things here that are interesting. Plus you had the Kuiper like randomly putting him in there like way early. So I don't know, maybe it's not a first round guy, but I don't know. I thought it was notable, at least for this mock, considering I was wildly different in most places already.
Isn't like one of his coaches McCaffrey's cousin or something like that? Like there was like a Rosengarten connection to McCaffrey too.
Yeah.
I forget what it was, but
all we got to do is we got to see him on IG Live, hanging out, him and CMC, and it's a lock. The 4-1 becomes 2-1.
This is good. This is good. You got me in. Current Kuiper is like Emmett Smith on the Cardinals. I talked about it last week. Like he is, shout out to Kuiper, the OG for sure. Definitely, I think an easier, mouthpiece to use for front offices these days because he's still so forward facing and prominent. So Kuiper hot take is something that can get out there and catch on a little bit faster. So if you're wanting to throw people off, doing so through Kuiper makes a ton of sense. So Scott, where are you at?
Senile right now, or what is this? Was that an old joke, or
What's that?
are you calling Kuiper senile or what?
No, I'm saying he's been around for a little while. I'm saying, he's one of the OGs in the space. And if you want to get information out there that's misleading, he's, standing at the top of the mountain because he's been there forever. So it's the best place to go if you want to throw a little misdirection out there. So
no, I totally agree.
Confirmation bias here. I'm calling BS on this Dallas Turner to the Chargers. But yeah, you backed a nice number, like big number on edge for the Chargers, and you wanted to retrofit that and steam your closing line value on that even more. So I'm calling.
You don't like it? You don't like the Dallas Turner fit with 11?
I don't, but I like that you got pretty big numbers on them to go edge. But Dallas Turner, to VR's point, is really hard to find a home for if he doesn't, go to Atlanta per se. So.
I mean, they like him, but it doesn't make sense from a on paper standpoint of like.
He got so many needs. He's got so many needs, and they just restructured Bosa and Mac. And I know that they'll like those guys are both injury prone, long in the tooth, whatever. But the team is so desperate for so many things.
Build the whole house out of defense, man. I mean, it's, and run the ball, and I mean, I don't know. I think it's less surprising than I know. It sounds completely ridiculous, but I think it would be less surprising in hindsight if they just built a sick defense.
It's true. It's true. And no cornerbacks right now, so they might want to look there too.
Line needs help. I mean, a lot of holes.
It's not great. Scott, where are you at in this section? I don't want to lead you. I'll let you take it wherever you want. We were talking about a couple of mock drafts we want to look at here before we wrap up too. We talk often about the Walter football mock drafts with some commonalities between what both Charlie and Walt have. Some commonality in the recent mocks that just came out, yesterday and today. They both have Bo Nix 12. They both have Michael Penix 13. So kind of staying in this section, touch on your thoughts there. Or anything else you want to touch on in this range?
And verse. They both have verse.
And verse at 9 to Chicago. Yeah.
Well, just to kind of hit on Atlanta for a second is Atlanta, if you look at their visits, they've been very specific with their top 30 visits, and that they've only visited with 4 players that were here projected in the first round. And that's Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Dallas Turner, and Jared Verse. Now, Latu's not on that list, but there's a good reason for him not to be on that list, is that the coaching staff is already familiar with who he is as a person, as a player. And it's just a matter of, medicals. If the medicals check out, and then their grade is what it is. But I think with them being as specific with those top 30 visits with the first round prospects, I think it does kind of point to them being in a move down position, specifically if the Jets want to go ahead and jump the Bears there for Odunze. So that's very interesting to me, but specifically the players that are kind of there, give them a little bit of room, with that whole basically 10 to 15 range. When it comes to Brock Bowers, well, actually, just to jump back to Latu, I've heard very specifically and heavily that Denver loves Latu. So you could very much see that Latu's floor could possibly be 12 at Denver if everything checks out, and you hear what all the scouts, Daniel Jeremiah, the other people that all love Latu. I could definitely see him if Denver misses out on quarterback or doesn't value quarterback at that standpoint, getting Latu there. So that's interesting as well. The Brock Bauer situation, I've heard specifically, while it's hard to go ahead and match him, I hear that his floor is 15. And that if he is there at 15, that the Colts will run that card up to the podium and take Bowers at 15. If not, they're kind of looking at either of the 2 cornerbacks. And look, the rest of it here, it's hard to sit here and say what the Chargers are going to do. I would tend to think that it's going to be offensive linemen. I think you have a lot of teams that are jumbled up in this mix that are all looking at offensive line. It's going to be really hard to go ahead and project which player fits which team the most. Talise Fuaga is the one that I tend to like a lot to the Raiders there. I think he makes a lot of sense. And then, another interesting note when I'm looking through like my top 30 visits, Fashanu didn't have a single top 30 visit. So it tends to tell me that teams are comfortable with who he is as a prospect. They don't have a whole lot of questions as far as his skill set, as far as his demeanor, his personality, and whatnot. So it was interesting that he didn't have any top 30 visits that I could really find to connect him to a specific team. So it makes you wonder, is he going to be more in line to be that second tackle taken off the board? And then the one who has gotten the most run here has been Fashanu. I think he fits multiple team schemes. He fits multiple positions. So those are kind of the players that all interest me here along this one. I find it very interesting for Connor's mock, specifically the trade up that he did to 16 to Brian Thomas. Seattle's been heavily rumored to be one of these teams that are looking to trade out, add some extra picks. So that's one of the things that interests me, because past linking Seattle to Fashanu, who I think is going to be drafted before they get to 16, they make a lot of sense to go ahead and move down.
Yeah.
I wonder, I know that, so, I mean, we know that Buffalo wants to get up the board and get a wideout. I think, it's something that we've heard, I know, a couple of times. And I wonder if they'd be able to get up to 8. I just don't know if they have enough ammo. I mean, that's just like
no shot.
Or like if Atlanta would move back. I mean, you don't think they'd have enough? I mean, it would be like a Julio Jones like trade, but not getting Julio Jones. It'd be like
yeah, I mean,
Odunze.
Yeah, I mean it'd be crazy. I mean,
yeah, like 16
I don't
is
even know
obviously
how much
more
that costs.
palatable, but yeah, it'd be an outrageous amount for a wide receiver. But I don't know, just the rumors are that they want to get aggressive with it. So I don't think that they'd be in play at 8, but 16 I think made a good amount of sense there to get
They
Brian
traded
Thomas.
up for Kincaid last year, but that was like only a couple spots.
3 spots, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. What are the thoughts in the back end here, Connor? Anything you want to touch on specifically that you felt strongly on or wanted to explain, or anything you have here? Say 17 to 32, and then we'll look at a couple other mocks.
Yeah, just real quick, added Darius Robinson. He's gained a lot of steam. I think he was called like a first round lock by a couple different people. But I mean, now, especially we're talking about Newton, like, adding Newton, Robinson, like some guys are gonna get pushed out here. Maybe my guy Rosengarten doesn't make the cut, but I think Rosengarten might be out. McConkey was kind of just, Xavier Worthy not going in the first round, here I thought was, I don't know. I mean, I put McConkey over him because we look at the Chiefs, like they already added Marquise Brown. They have Rashee Rice, maybe some legal trouble, but just from like a scheming perspective, a guy like McConkey who can do multiple things and eat in different areas of the field instead of just Worthy, who's like, more of a yak or deep field kind of guy, not quite as polished. So I thought McConkey made a little bit more sense there. And then I had the Cardinals doubling down on wide out. I mean, probably doesn't happen. It's just the way the board shook out. Like there was already like 8 or 9 offensive linemen gone, so there wasn't anyone standing out at that point. So I think the Cardinals are probably more in play there for an offensive lineman. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was definitely a unique exercise, but I wanted to make some statements relative to the market overall, I guess, from top to bottom, to be honest.
Yeah, 26 and 27 are huge tipping points to me for the back end of this round, because there are name guys that are like consistently mocked to both teams, whether it's like Nate Wiggins, Chop Robinson, Kool-Aid, Darius, where one of those group is going to fall really based off the Bucks pick to me. Where like if Chop doesn't go to the Bucks, like it's hard to put him in a spot earlier or later, but like he is like a strong consensus to go to the Bucks. And then Nate Wiggins as well, like it's either the Bucks or the Eagles. I don't buy the Eagles. But at the same time, you kind of hear about Nate Wiggins in the Bengals, which is somewhat enough for me not to have interest in the over at this point. But it's just tight in the 20s with all these O linemen that are probably going to go earlier than they should, because the drop off is so drastic once you get into like the second round, third round, because the linemen are going to go for me. And then Odunze Mitchell is going to go. And then just slotting in the corners or like a guy like Chop is just tough. It gets tight.
I think 20, 21, 22 are, I don't know if it's going to be those guys, but I think that's a run of offensive linemen.
Oh yeah.
And then what we had in Schrager's mock today, which I think is very interesting. Schrager, again, like really tight with Sean McVay, and he wanted to kind of go on a limb. In his way he wrote up the Rams today was, I'll go on record with something of a guarantee here. If the Rams do not trade back, you better believe Sean McVay's first ever first round selection will be an offensive player. Again, like he's guaranteeing it. He's connected, and he's specifically connected here in a different way. So, Byron Murphy, this has been a spot where like Latu has gone often. If he slides, increasingly likely that is another spot for another offensive lineman, perhaps.
Right.
Whereas 18 is another spot. So that cluster there could be very prominent for where you have an offensive lineman run where like you're sweating your over O lineman ticket. Well, boom, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 could answer a lot of questions. And I think you could see some jockeying around in there if guys have a certain guy that they want to get and land, knowing that that's a spot where offensive line makes a ton of sense. Like,
yeah, and like
Pittsburgh and Miami especially.
Yeah, and like I don't think it was like a hedge with like the trade where like at first I read it incorrect on how Schrager worded it. Like I thought he said like offensive lineman, but then he just said offense, and like where he like I don't know if it was like a hedge on like the trade because he's like I don't know if McVay told him like we want to trade, but if we don't, we're gonna take offense or what. But Latu has been like a strong consensus to 19 if he's not going earlier. And like I think we even saw that there was like a report that like the Rams cleared Latu. But Schrager had Latu going, I think 12 in that range. So I'd be very interested to see what like maybe that's a guarantee because he doesn't think Latu's gonna get there, or maybe I don't know what it is. But yeah, Schrager with the Rams and the Cardinals is always what you want to look for.
The Rams don't have like a ton of edge talent, but they have a couple of young guys under contract. It feels like an odd fit to me because in terms of like just another team that has a bunch of needs, off the top of my head, I'm not thinking, especially even defensively, that edge is actually what they need. It just doesn't. I would hear with what Connor did. Byron Murphy makes way more sense in terms of an internal defensive line presence. Corner would make way more sense for them. But go ahead, Scott. What do you want to add?
The whispers that have kind of been floating around lately here is specifically connecting the Rams to one of the quarterbacks. You've had some whispers here and there that Stafford doesn't have too many years left, and they've done a little bit of homework. No top 30 visits with any prospects have been reported for the Rams. I don't. It's hard to see them drafting either one of these quarterbacks here. They did go ahead and meet with Bo Nix at the combine, but so did everybody else. So that doesn't really tell you much. But specifically, I've heard that they like Penix a bit. Would that put them in a position to maybe move up in the second round and get them? What it might be. What's the owner's decision? How much does he play in the long-term aspect of the team? Do they ride another year, which I think, you saw how competitive they were this past year. I think you just ride Stafford until the wheels fall off and do what you can to protect them. But there are whispers out there with quarterback.
It's just we have like literally nothing to go off of because this regime has like never drafted in the first round. So like we don't even know who would be making the decision. Like I'm assuming it's McVay because like he's earned it. He's like McVay, but we just have no idea because they've never picked in the first. And if there are odds, like I would like they're probably going to trade out in my opinion. Like it's what they've always done, and that is a prime spot, like you said, Noonan, to get in front of a run that you're probably expecting because the Steelers are probably going to go O-line. Dolphins are probably going to go O-line. The Eagles, O-line is trending towards – they might even be the favorite for O-line now. And then if the Chargers are there, O-line. Like, if you want to get one of these remaining tackles, like 19 is probably the spot you want to go to.
I still think the Packers are more likely than not to go O-line. I still think that the Ravens more likely than not want to go O-line. I think it makes sense for both the Niners and the Chiefs as well.
Yeah, like Ravens trading it at 19, I think is doable, and fairly sure. Did they trade it up last year? No.
No, they
I
just
think they were.
sit home and take the player that
Okay.
should not be there. It happens every year. I hate it so much.
Okay, last note here. You mentioned Michael Penix. Before we move to Schrager's mock, got to bring this up because VR talked about this. I threw a blind comparison up yesterday between two.
I wish you had a neither option. You should have included a neither option, FYI.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But then everyone would have voted for that. Quarterback A is Hendon Hooker. Quarterback B is Michael Penix. 80%, 78, 79% chose blindly Hendon Hooker, third-round quarterback with one torn ACL, better final stats, and like played better. Again, I know it's different. They're in different systems. Michael Penix is more touch accuracy, whatever. He has 4 season-ending injuries. 4 season-ending injuries. He transferred. Like I don't know. I'm gonna bet it. I'm betting Michael Penix over. It's like even money. I don't know if you guys are on board. I'm ignoring just every report saying that he could go to the Raiders, could go to the Rams, could go everywhere. Like if you take him in the first round, just quit being a GM. I think it's just over. Like I think he's legit terrible pick.
Yeah, I think he's gotten way too much run just off of his arm talent. I don't think there's enough there when you actually see him play against top talent to see the consistency across the short and middle part of the field. It's great to see him throw deep, but what happens when the NFL coverage just go ahead and take that away? I think he's between the injuries and between some of the inconsistencies I've seen in college, and specifically when you look at how old he is as a prospect, I don't see him as a player that seems should move up into the first round to pick.
But here we are in our basements talking about the draft, and these guys actually get to make the shot.
It's just, look, when it comes to Penix, it's got a lot of Malik. It's got a lot of the Hendon Hooker feel. Like these guys for the longest time are getting mock draft throughout the whole process, and then it comes and these guys are like second and third round picks. That's what Michael Penix feels like to me.
I'm betting.
I mean, if I was a GM and you're a lefty, you're immediately crossed off. Like lefties.
Also true.
I mean, your left tackle has to go to right. Like it's just.
I mean, you got to flip your whole offense. You know, some people don't like that. Some of the boomers get mad about that.
Yeah. I mean, they're like complaining about the spin of the ball being different. Like,
that's why Belichick always liked those lefty punters.
I know he got away from it, but that was why he's the GOAT. Fuck everyone.
That's why I got you here, buddy. All right, what are we going to talk about with Schrager's mock? I thought the Rams thing was interesting. He has Nabers falling a little bit, which I thought was noteworthy too. He had one of those trade back scenarios where the Cardinals fall back from 4 to 6. He has the Giants trading up for JJ McCarthy, Odunze over Nabers, and then he has another trade for the Colts moving up with the Bears to take Nabers at 9. So those are kind of interesting thoughts. Just kind of Odunze over Nabers VR, and then obviously the Giants not only taking quarterback, but trading up to ensure that they do it.
I mean, we talked about it last week, and I harped on it. Jalen Polk, like he put him at the last pick of the first round, 45-1 last week. And I mean, the context in the pick, it was kind of like, I love him. It didn't seem like there was anything behind it, I guess, for the mock. His tweets definitely had the feeling of like he knew something, but I was extremely happy to see him put him in the first at pick 32. Whether that happens, like I'm hoping. I think a lot of people listening, I'm hoping. But yeah, I think he's like 15-1 now, which is probably way too low. But at the same time, like winning a 15-1 is a lot better than not. Then he had McConkey at 31, which I feel like McConkey's going to make his way. We're like, again, like we were just saying, like the 20s are so tight, and jamming these guys like McConkey, Polk, like Nealon, whoever it is, like one or two might make it in. But it is tight. And I mean, everyone knows that like Schrager's gone on record saying like his first mock is going to be crazy so that he can like field all the reactions and adjust accordingly, which is this. So I would take everything with a grain of salt. and really, he missed a lot last year, but he's still worth a lot. 6-1, unreal.
You guys are animals.
Fake odds, but yeah, that's crazy.
Scott, what do you? I don't know if you had a chance to look at Schrager. I know you were waiting for the Schrager mock. It's obviously been a final mock that is noteworthy year in and year out. You can make the case that the early mocks are a chance to put Jalen Polks of the world in there and kind of plant your flag on guys per se than accuracy. But what are your thoughts on the Schrager mock today?
Yeah, the thing that stands out the most to me is specifically that 4-6 trade with the Giants and the Cardinals. A lot of people have kind of put Minnesota there at 4 and had them going up to get McCarthy, but you have to kind of think about how much of a possibility is it for Cardinals if they really want one of these wide receivers to move down to 11 to then have to go ahead and work the phones to try to move back up. I think for both of these teams in this scenario, whether you believe the Giants want McCarthy or not, if they do, I think moving to 4 is something that is very viable, because I think Arizona would be willing to just drop down 2 spots, add another pick. They still have another pick there in the first round. They'd still be able to get whichever wide receiver they prefer, whether it be Nabers, whether it be Odunze. So there's a viability there for Arizona to move to 6 and McCarthy to be there at 4. And I just think that it's going to take a lot for the Cardinals to move all the way down to 11 and just stay there and decide, hey, we'll get one of the lesser wide receivers later in the draft, or have to make all the moves that they're going to make in a short period of time to go ahead and move back up to get in contention to take one of these wide receivers. So that's one of the things that kind of glaringly stood out to me the most within Schrager's mock draft. Like you said, there's some trades, some other things going around. He seems pretty set on Bowers, but specifically that combination right there, when you start thinking through scenarios of how those first couple picks are going to play out, I think that's a very viable scenario.
It's so fascinating to me because the Giants, if they take JJ McCarthy and they make a move for a quarterback, they're still in the same spot that they're in theoretically, other than maybe they think they have the answer at the quarterback, but like they still don't have a great offensive line. They still don't have a supporting cast that can maintain and like elevate a rookie quarterback. The defense still has massive question marks and holes. You brought in like Drew Lock for what? And I don't know, like Drew Lock shouldn't make a difference whether you add a quarterback in the future or not. But like if you wanted to make a move to solidify your backup quarterback because you lost yours, why wouldn't that just be the rookie that you're going to take at 6? Why are you going to now have the rookie and Lock and Jones, who you have under contract massively for one more year? So I think there's enough steam there. Yeah, I mean, it's Daniel Jones all over again. I think it is too. I don't have an appetite for that. And I'm surprised that the Giants would, but there's enough steam there, right? And Schrager's more of it. So like it's pretty interesting there. Anything else you want to touch on?
One of the other questions in the chat is, do I think, do any of us think that McCarthy's worth the top 6 pick? In my opinion, no, I don't think he is, because I think it's too much of a projection. You have to project him to be that. I personally, I think he's worth like a pick in the 20s. But look, these teams are quarterback hungry, and somebody's going to move up to get him. I think he's a sure shot to be top 5. Connor's hit on the stance we have on him going under at 5.5. And I just think the way the league works, you either have a quarterback or you don't. And some people are going to love the makeup of this kid and what he's done, on the field and in the meeting rooms. And I think he's going to get there, but I don't value him as that high of a pick, just because there's too many holes in projections that you would need for me to be a GM to draft him that high.
I just don't think we've seen enough from him. The reality is to Scott's point, you either have one or you don't. And we're collectively as a evaluation community, and that obviously goes to a smaller circle, and the actual NFL evaluators, scouts, decision makers are historically terrible at identifying quarterbacks. Good quarterbacks fall, can't miss prospects miss. So yeah, I think he's worth the top 6 pick, because I don't think you're going to sit across from him in a meeting. I don't think you're going to get him on a whiteboard. I don't think you're going to put him up in front of a podium and not be super impressed with some of those intangibles. Like he has all of that. He is since he was like 13, like boxed to be a NFL quarterback and work through this process. And he has all the polish. We didn't see enough on film, but that doesn't mean that's not there. And in this day and age, you got to have the quarterback. So yeah, I think he should probably be a top 6 pick. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a scout and he's 20th on my big board. Like I don't have a big board. I sure as shit don't have, you wouldn't respect my big board because it's pieced together off of other people's, right? So he should be a top 6 pick because he's an answer to the question that if you don't have an answer to it, then you're back up thinking about it again next year. So
yeah.
Any other takeaways on Schrager or JJ or whatever you guys want to do, Connor?
No, I think you guys hit on that with JJ there. Notable guys that were left out of Schrager's mock, which are very commonly mocked. This is very interesting. Nate Wiggins, Chop Robinson, Jackson Powers Johnson, Jazon Newton, Jordan Morgan, all left out of the first round. Nate Wiggins is a tough one. I mean, we got steam last week that some teams might think he's one of the best corners and that Quinyon Mitchell is falling. But if you look at it, it's just he's kind of raw. So it's like one of those things that he's tough to gauge. So I really don't know what to do with him, to be honest. I'll probably have him in the first round, but like VR said it multiple times, like there's something about him that's kind of scary, and I'm like he could fall,
especially with Cooper. Cooper like going off on his pro day, whether that's pushing Wiggins up or what. Yeah, it's just tough. It's like because he's got all the talent in the world, but it's tough to slot him, which isn't enough for me to bet an over yet. But yeah.
VR, any other Schrager takeaways? Connor did some good work there, noting the guys that are off of it. Xavier Worthy to Dallas, I thought was interesting one. Zach Frazier, another like appearance in the back ends. We've talked about Zach Frazier a few times here. Any other Schrager thoughts?
Yeah, Frazier was notable. Where guys like Duke Mayweather, who is like the offensive line guru that everyone respects a lot, it seems like in the NFL, has Zach Frazier, it seems like far ahead of JPJ. And Jackson Powers Johnson, someone keeps betting the under. I would love to know who that is. Every time it gets bet up, someone's betting it down, where it's 31.5 on DraftKings, like Caesars is 32.5. Not too worried about that one spot, but yeah, like we said, like the 20s are tight. If like guys like Xavier Worthy jump in, like that is pushing a guy like Chop or Nate or whoever it is out. If the Cowboys are kind of a prime spot for whether it's an offensive lineman, linebackers trendy, that I would say is probably up in the air. That could be one of those like 10-1 first round at one point guys to go there, because it does seem like a lot of the other teams, like the Packers, are going to go line, even though they haven't drafted one in like a decade, it seems. And then the Lions are another one that is dicey. But yeah, Xavier Worthy, I mean, his over-under is 27.5 now, which when I first saw it, I thought it was too low. But at the same time, here we are. Apparently, it's right on the money.
Yeah, it's tough.
Hoping for some matchups. DraftKings,
yeah.
I hope they post matchups soon as well.
The JPJ piece, 31.5, 32.5. I think you make a good point. Kind of irrelevant. Take the better price. That's putting him on the Chiefs, and the Chiefs, of all the things they need, interior offensive line is not it. So that would not be a JPJ landing spot at all. So, all right, guys. So a little more than an hour. We're going to be back on Friday to do it again. Anyone have anything in closing? Go around the horn, Connor. Anything for the folks?
Bet Michael Penix over.
Scott?
Yeah, one of the questions in the chat earlier was specifically about conference over-unders. When you start looking at Schrager's mock, and I think the number for the SEC sits somewhere around 9.5. Schrager had 11 in. Specifically, when I look at that number, the conference that has the most outs when you start looking at players on the back end of those bubble type of players is going to be the SEC. So of the conferences that I would feel the most comfortable with, it would be the SEC over.
Yeah, and a lot of those conference bets are like, you're really just like betting on like one or two guys. Like if they're like the over-under is like 5.5, like 4 of them are locks to go first round. And then you're betting on like the 5th and maybe the 6th guy to go in the first. which you might as well just bet them to go the first round if they're plus money, instead of if you're looking for the over, which the under, I guess, would be betting the other side of them going no, which they don't offer, which would be probably the way. But yeah, you're really just betting on one or two guys to go for a lot of these over-unders because the majority of them are locks. But yeah, I'm on SEC over as well. Like Caesars had like a flat 10, which was like the first flat over-under I've ever seen. And it was like minus 120 at the time. And I bet that, which got like negative CLV now, which is wild. But I think the under is like minus 150, which I wasn't happy about. But.
Yeah, some good questions in the chat. I've captured some of them. Maybe we do a question Q&A section on Friday's show as part of what we do. So good ones. Come back and add some more on Friday, and we'll get to some more of the stuff in closing. So again, head over to the website 444.com. Go to the plans page. Use the promo code VR. Just 2 letters. That's it. And you will get the discounts to get the betting subscription. You'll get all of the draft picks from VR for every draft. I didn't see you in the WNBA streets, buddy, which is disappointing. I wanted to see what we're doing there. Some Caitlin Clark, some Cameron Brink. I'm trying to think of my WNBA.
Are there odds?
I have
Angel Reese under 7.5 was good. Get to minus 1,000 per day.
Good play. Yeah. Didn't get it, but yeah, if you want all the rest of it from VR, get in the Discord. Again, the betting subscription to 444 promo code VR. Check that out and go buy a sheet. Head over to Vegas Refund on Twitter. Scoop that up. So, Scott, you got anything in closing? Bring it home. All right. Subscribe to the channel before you take off. Come back on Friday. We're going to do it all again. I said draft is only 9 days away, but we probably have like another 4 shows. So subscribe so you don't miss it. We're going to have all the info that you could possibly want here on the channel. So for Connor, Scott, VR, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.